What if everything that once motivated you suddenly stopped mattering? Your plans, your goals, your desire to conquer the world just vanished. Ethan Carter knew this feeling all too well. For years, he knew exactly what he wanted. He woke up every day with a clear purpose, feeling that energy in his chest pushing him forward. But one day, everything changed. It didn't happen out of nowhere. It wasn't by chance. But when it did happen, it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. What once made sense no longer did. That inner voice saying, "Go, keep going, you need this," went silent. It was as if something inside him had dissolved, and now he didn't know where to go. If you've ever gone through this, or if you're going through it now, I want you to know this phase has a purpose, and more importantly, there is a way out. In this video, I will show you what really happens when motivation disappears after a spiritual awakening, and how you can rebuild it in a way that's much more authentic and aligned with who you truly are. Spiritual awakening is like fireworks. At first, it's just a small fuse burning, but once it's lit, there's no stopping what comes next. And Ethan Carter felt this firsthand. Phase 1, the fuse is lit. The search begins. It all starts with a spark, a question, a moment of doubt. Something inside you senses that there's more, something that has always been there, but now it starts calling your attention. For Ethan, this spark came unexpectedly. Maybe for you, it happened the same way. A conversation, a book, an event that deeply moved you. Suddenly, the world no longer feels as solid as before. You feel the need to search for something, but you still don't know exactly what. Phase 2, the ascent, expansion, and euphoria. And then the rocket starts rising. Suddenly, everything seems clear. You begin to see the world differently. Things start connecting. The universe seems to be speaking to you. Ethan felt an energy he had never experienced before. New ideas, profound sensations. Everything seemed to have a higher order, a hidden meaning that was now being revealed. Many people describe this phase as a time of intense happiness, like they've discovered the secret of life. But what goes up eventually explodes. Phase 3, the explosion, the disappearance of the self. And then it happens. The rocket reaches its peak and explodes. What once seemed so solid disappears. The identity you built throughout your life dissolves. You realize that you are not who you thought you were, that you never were. Ethan felt this as a breakdown. At first, it was liberating. He realized he wasn't just a name, a role, a story. He was something much bigger, but at the same time, something inside him also felt lost. This phase can be breathtaking, but also terrifying, because when the self disappears, what's left? What do you do when you realize that your old motivation has disappeared? Most people do the same thing. They try to get back what they lost. But what if I told you that this is the worst thing you can do? Ethan tried everything. He went back to his old goals. He tried to force himself to feel that inner fire again. He followed the same routines, chased the same pleasures, but nothing worked. It was like trying to reignite a fire that had already burned out for good. This happens because old motivation was based on the ego, the need to be someone, to achieve something, to prove something. Now, without that identity, those impulses no longer make sense. And no matter how hard you try, you can't go back to who you were before. Then, in a moment of realization, Ethan stopped, looked at the horizon, and thought to himself, what if I no longer need to chase motivation the same way? What if I've been looking in the wrong place all along? The problem was never a lack of motivation. The problem was how we try to access it. And here's the key. The old engine doesn't work anymore. But there is a new one waiting to be discovered. If the old fuel no longer works, what is the new fuel? How can we find a motivation that doesn't fade away, but instead comes from a place that's much more real? What if I told you you haven't lost motivation, you're just trying to access it the wrong way? What you feel isn't exhaustion. It's the end of an old fuel that no longer serves you. Many panic at this point. They believe they've lost something essential. Ethan Carter felt the same. He pressured himself, searched for answers, but nothing worked. Until he realized the problem was never a lack of motivation. The problem was trying to find it where it no longer existed. Before, motivation came from seeking validation. It was fueled by fear of failure, of not being enough. But now, that fear was gone. The identity he built had dissolved, and without it, the old engine stopped working. But motivation wasn't gone, it only needed a new fuel. And when Ethan embraced this, everything changed. The 3 principles of true motivation. What if you acted without expecting anything in return? He realized his old drive was tied to results, but true movement comes from doing for the sake of doing. Without expectation, action becomes effortless. What if purpose wasn't something you chase, but something you experience now? Purpose isn't in the future, it's in the present moment. When you are fully present, anything can become meaningful. What if the strongest motivation comes not from what you get, but from what you give? When Ethan stopped focusing on himself and asked, how can I contribute? A new fire ignited inside him. Real motivation isn't external. It comes from connection to yourself, to the moment, and to something greater than you. Knowing something intellectually isn't enough. Real transformation only happens when you live this new reality. Now that you understand what truly drives you, the question is, how do you bring this motivation into your daily routine? When Ethan realized he needed a new fuel, he faced another challenge. How do I turn this new energy into real action? He discovered that the answer wasn't in big, sudden changes, but in small, daily adjustments that, over time, would completely transform his relationship with motivation. That's how he started applying 3 simple but extremely powerful practices. 1, he created a conscious routine. It's not about what you do, but how you do it. Before, Ethan did things on autopilot, always rushing toward the next goal. Now he realized that every action, no matter how small, could be an opportunity for presence and meaning. What does this mean in practice? Simple things like turning small tasks into moments of total presence, replacing rushing with mindfulness, doing everything with intention, even something as simple as making coffee or taking a walk. 2, he opened himself to new experiences. The more you try to control life, the less you flow with it. Ethan realized that a big part of his frustration came from trying to force motivation instead of allowing himself to experience it in new ways. How did he apply this in his daily life? Exploring new activities without expectations, trying new things without needing a big purpose behind them, accepting that motivation sometimes comes from unexpected places. 3, he connected with something bigger than himself. The emptiness you feel can't be filled with more achievements, but it can be filled with connection. Ethan discovered that his motivation came back when he stopped focusing only on himself and started asking, how can I contribute to the world around me? The answers he found: small acts of kindness and generosity, creating something that benefits others, sharing what he learned without expecting anything in return. When Ethan started applying these practices, he noticed something incredible. He no longer had to force motivation. It simply appeared naturally. Now he understood that motivation was never about chasing something. It was about being fully present with what was already in front of him. And that's the greatest lesson you can take from this. Motivation never disappeared. It just changed form. When you stop looking in the wrong place, the answer appears right in front of you. Ethan started this journey feeling lost. He tried to recover his old motivation, to force himself to be who he was before, but none of it worked. It was only when he stopped resisting and started observing that he finally understood the truth. Motivation doesn't come from chasing something. It comes from aligning with who you truly are. And when he applied the 3 principles he learned, something amazing happened. He started acting without attachment to results. He found purpose in the present, not in some distant goal. He connected with something greater than himself, giving new meaning to his journey. And then for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. Now it's your turn. I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. What drives you today? Are you still trying to find motivation in the wrong place? What if instead of chasing it, you simply trusted the process? If this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Which of these ideas made you reflect the most? And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Because sometimes all we need to find our way again is a simple reminder that it was always there.